What's the thing that scares you the most?
Confined spaces and blood particles in the air, the dark, that coral thing that's been staring at me since I came in here.
Chris, I'm scared to death.
Welcome to the Sum of All Fear podcast, the show that examines real-life phobias and the horror movies that prey on them.
So pour yourself something strong, Feardos, and let's find out what makes you afraid.
Yeah, it's always good when we start a podcast and then you get a phone call right in the middle because you forgot to put it on airplane mode.
I was too enthusiastic anyways.
Well, you were like overly excited about your podcast.
I am overly excited about my podcast. How am I supposed to dampen?
Not your podcast. Let's get this straight. Podcasts you listen to.
My personal favorite podcast.
Not our podcast.
Well, I mean, I'm very enthusiastic about ours too, but
well, you listen to a lot of you like the comedian podcast. You like the.
I like the
Dr.
Dr. Drew.
And you like the brain stuff.
He has podcasts. Ron Burgundy, the new podcast.
Have you listened to it yet?
I did. It's on true crime. You should listen to it.
Is
I found
good?
it pretty funny. I'm interested to see how far they can take it before it just gets old. But I just love Ron Burgundy so much.
That's awesome.
Here goes Scotch. Scotch. Down into
I'm not
my
drinking
belly.
Scotch. I'm drinking. But it's an afternoon right now. By the way, we are podcasting in the afternoon.
Yeah, we've got no time lately.
This is a new thing for us. We're trying to squeeze this in between the end of our workday and the beginning of your roller derby practice.
Yeah.
So it's this is a new deal for us.
Yeah, very new.
But my podcast, I like horror podcasts.
Surprise.
Yeah, I listen to Shockwaves, which is a great one. A lot of the Blumhouse people, Ryan Turek, the guy who I think he was the producer of Halloween, the new Halloween, and Rebecca McKendry and Elric Kane, and it's a great podcast. Those guys know their horror shit, man. On
Sunday, you introduced me to the Horror Virgin, which
I really like that one. I love it.
I loved their breakdown of Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
I thought their interplay was hilarious, and it was a good one.
Yeah, I mentioned that on Twitter because I really like that one. It's really a great concept. It reminds me of, we have a friend who Dave who's a horror virgin that literally like Poltergeist scarred him so much as a child that he like won't watch any horror movies.
I highly recommended Poltergeist to him though, and I think
he would. Well, Poltergeist is a little different. There is a difference in like horror that like scares you and horror that's just stupid and ridiculous.
But then I always fall back on the typical psychology ones. The Hilarious World of Depression is great. Terrible Thanks for Asking is another good one.
Yeah, your podcasts are very. You have an eclectic group, but you really stick to comedians and mental health.
But one that really cross sections both is Getting Better with Ron Funches.
That doesn't cross section both.
It does, because it's about getting.
Oh, is it?
It's about bettering yourself, and about just finding something in a way, or listening to someone that is trying to better themselves in some way, and it's very inspiring, and I like it.
I think since he's gotten skinny. I think he's got some attitude now, and I don't like it. I don't appreciate it.
I think you have a chip on your shoulder.
I think I like fat Ron Funches better.
I think you're jealous and maybe a little green with envy.
What, that he lost weight?
Yeah.
Why would that be green with envy? Are you calling me fat?
Yes.
Is that what you just did? Did you just call me Ron Funches fat? Damn.
No, not Ron Funches fat.
Damn. What a bitch. Oh, well, welcome.
I'm saying you were envious of his podcast success, but I'm glad that you finally reconciled something with yourself.
Jeez.
God.
Damn. All right. Well, welcome, Feardos.
Hey, Feardos.
You didn't say that the right way. You're supposed to have that voice.
Feardos.
Thanks for tuning in again. This is episode 7 of our podcast and we're going to be talking about agoraphobia, which or
agoraphobia.
I've always heard it called agoraphobia, but every time I heard it pronounced, it was agoraphobia.
How is it spelled?
Agora.
Okay, so say it the first way.
Agra.
Okay.
Or agora are the two different ways. Agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is the way I heard it pronounced.
Agoraphobia.
Yeah, so thanks for listening, guys. We're happy that we're on our 7th episode.
It's incredible.
We're moving right along.
We stuck with something for 7 times.
I know. I'm kind of amazed.
Woo! High five!
I've actually already kind of been like, are we really going to keep this thing going? This is a lot of work every week. Like, I don't know. Like,
you've got baseball coming up. You're coaching a majors team.
This baseball stuff is ridiculous. Like, it's coaching any athletic, like kids athletics is a time sucker, but coaching, like, once you get up to like the kids when they're starting to be like better, and you actually have to really start coaching, it is ridiculous how much time I love it. I really enjoy it. I like baseball. I like coaching kids is really rewarding and it's fun, but
people don't
it
understand
is a lot of work.
How much volunteer time
there's
goes
a
into
lot
it.
Of there's a lot of time.
It. But you know what? Your boys appreciate it and they see it, and that's something they're going to translate into their families when they grow up.
I hope so.
So
I hope they appreciate it. I
know
modeling. I know they appreciate it. I think
good modeling. Good job, honey.
Oh, thanks, honey.
You're welcome.
But thanks for tuning in, guys. Just a real quick, beginning of the show deal. Check out our social media. We're on Facebook at Some of All Fear Podcast. We are on Twitter at Some of All Fear Pod, P-O-D. What else we're on? Instagram. We have an Instagram now. Some of All Fear Podcast as well. No, at Some of All Fear Pod also, I think. But check it out. Geez. We're on there somewhere.
You put us everywhere.
Yeah, we're all over the place, and we're getting some really good feedback. We're getting a lot of good.
And I've been researching some merch.
Ooh.
Some ideas for merch, and some companies that will do the general printing.
So like drop shipping type deal?
Yeah,
Nice.
At least in the beginning.
That'd be fun.
While we're growing. But I would like a t-shirt. You know how much of a fanatic about t-shirts I am.
Yeah, it'd be great to have some t-shirts. Maybe we'll do that soon. I would love to get some stuff. Yeah, our hats and t-shirts.
You need another black hat.
We need to motivate people. We apparently need to motivate people to rate us and review us and write a comment.
Thanks to those who have recently.
Yeah, we only have like 7. We only have like 7 rankings on Apple, and I know there's more of you listening on Apple because I see the statistics.
That's 7 more than we've ever had, though.
I know, but we need more. I really would appreciate it, even if they're shitty. I would rather have shitty ones. And just to have you interact and rate and rank us.
Are you seeking approval right now?
Well, it's just I like it. I like seeing new ones pop up, and I check it every day.
Aww.
And there won't be like a new one for like a week, and I'll be like, oh, there's one little rating that popped up.
Please.
So if you're listening, rate us and review us and leave us a little review, especially if you're friends of ours. I'm gonna start getting on you assholes.
Aw.
Because it only takes a second. No, it only takes a second. There's no excuse. Damn it. So do that. Rate us, leave a review. And yeah, check us out on all the platforms, right? We're on Apple, we're on Google, we're on Stitcher, we're on
everywhere.
Yeah, all over the place. Radio Public.
We're an everywhere man.
Yeah. So life has been busy.
So busy.
Crazy stuff.
We came back from New Orleans and it was like 0 to 600 now.
Yeah, Chris got like a promotion. Well,
get a promotion.
She got a new position, which was really, really important because it was stressing her out big time.
Yeah.
And I found out that like maybe things weren't great my job position. And so we switched places.
Yeah, and it was like night and day that day. But
so if you're out there listening and you need some content for your website, let me know because I content or marketing or PR. That's my deal. So let me know if you need anybody in those positions. I could use a little job backup here soon. Have you watched any movies this week?
I think I fell asleep to a couple, but I've been very
You fall asleep to a lot
tired.
Of movies.
I did make the boys watch Anna and the Apocalypse, though.
Yes.
Despite its R rating, okay, I checked the content on IMDb, and the only issue was that, A, it was bloody gory, and we've had this discussion with our children about bloody gory TV and fake versus reality, and real trauma versus fake trauma. So don't get all sensitive on me. And there was one bout of kissing, and both children were like, "Mew," of course.
And then there's a lot of shits and fucks, and and various cussing
And it's not like they haven't heard that from one or both parents
at various times.
No,
I think they both really enjoyed it. They both had this real weird fascination with death. I wonder why. With their parents,
and they both like musicals, especially the little one. He kept singing the songs after.
Yeah, they were super excited about all of that part. But yeah, I really enjoy that movie. That is a really great movie. It absolutely would have made my top 10 for last year if I had seen it in time.
Right.
It came out in December, but I didn't see it till January. And it just didn't make it on because I hadn't seen it yet. And it was really, really good.
I have several of the songs.
It was, wait, do you remember what I called it?
No.
What my description was, High School Musical meets Shaun of the Dead.
Yes, I've been using that to tell everyone because it's such an accurate description.
It's perfect description for that movie. It's probably, somebody already said it, and I probably heard it somewhere else.
I love the music so much. Like, I listen to it on my playlist at work every day.
It's really good. And I think I don't know if I've watched much else.
Lots of reruns this week, kind of mindless stuff.
Yeah, mindless shit, because I just haven't been so busy and tired and I get home.
But what's your favorite kind of rerun, Drew?
Shut up. I watch sitcom reruns, all right? I like them. Parks and Rec, How I Met Your Mother.
Parks and Rec, though.
What
Brooklyn
else?
Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, yeah.
Nine-Nine.
Yeah, so we are definitely a sitcom rerun people when we need something mindless in the background, for sure.
But we're definitely in a bit of a show hole, right?
Yeah, there hasn't been anything popping like new show-wise.
No.
So send us your suggestions because...
I mean, the Ted Bundy tapes, you liked that.
Ooh, that was good.
It was interesting.
Yeah, it was good. I liked the Ted
But it's not
Bundy
really
tape.
a show. It's like a documentary.
Yeah, that was
it's
good.
A little different.
That'll relate to our feature presentation today because we're gonna be doing like the serial killer route for our feature today. Which, I just there's a podcast that I listen to all the time. Last Podcast.
Yes. I love Last Podcast.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who listen to that one out there in our Feardo land. But yeah, the serial killer stuff is I always find that fascinating. And that was an interesting one because it was a lot of, I felt like, it didn't dive in super deep, but it definitely gave you some of those like interviews and that stuff that, some of that real news clip stuff that was really interesting. So
that kind of psychology was my trajectory through, my entire schooling, until I decided to stay at my university, and they obviously didn't have like a forensic track or something like that. So I did something that was broadly applicable, therapy, you wanted
to
broad
analyze,
clinical license.
You wanted to be Clarice, didn't you?
I wanted to be Clarice Starling. She was like my inspiration because of how she could see through everything and kind of see to the heart of people, even if they projected no heart. So yeah.
And I think that kind of dovetails into something that I wanted to bring up in this intro a little bit. I think it's really important that we talk about the fact that we are really big proponents of mental health awareness.
Oh, absolutely.
And making sure that your
awareness, support, crisis intervention support, anybody who's in, the mental health field, even if you're not, seek out volunteer work. You don't have to have a license to be trained in mental health crisis prevention. It's so needed nowadays.
We know there's a crisis. We know there's a major crisis, and so maybe at some point, it'd be really cool if at some point maybe we'll get a Patreon or something like that, and maybe we can give a percentage to one of the big mental health awareness groups or something. Or maybe
like some sort of a group that really supports mental health awareness or education too.
Yeah, one of these days down the road, hopefully we'll
if
get
you have
like
any ideas, let us know.
Yeah, we would love to team up with you. Like if you're part of that circle somewhere,
yes.
We would love to figure out how to use this for good and not for evil.
Right.
We'll talk about the evil.
Because I'm a mental health professional and we find this topic interesting, but, obviously this is a podcast. It's not meant for professional help, but it doesn't mean that we don't support seeking of professional help.
Absolutely.
And, helping to improve quality of life, no matter what you're suffering from.
For sure. So with that, I would like for you to not improve my mental health. Stomp on my mental health. Make my mental health really, really sad.
What is
it? Really, are you ready to depress me some more?
I've seen you very depressed lately. I don't think you need to be
I'm
more
not that depressed. Maybe a little bit.
You're a little down.
I've been a little down.
And it bums me out because I know, A, I'm a rescuer, so I'll try and rescue you, even though you don't need rescuing. And 2, there's nothing to rescue from yet.
Do you hear that, kids? You hear that?
Is that the sound of your life raft?
That's the sound of whiskey.
The whiskey life raft?
Whiskey is not a prescribed mental health. It's not a prescribed antidepressant.
No, it's actually a depressant.
No, I don't think so. Pretty sure you're wrong about that.
I'm pretty sure your brain is.
Because when I drink this, I feel less depressed. So I don't understand how that works.
Just because you feel
who makes up these categories?
Just because you feel less depression doesn't mean you have less depression.
Whatever.
It's like when you take an opiate. Just because you feel less pain doesn't mean you have
whatever.
less pain.
Whatever.
You
Serotonin, blah, 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 blah.
Less.
Bullshit. Blood sugar, blah, blah.
Man, you are so relaxing in denial.
I am ready for What the Fear.
Okay.
Are you ready for America's favorite phobia-based trivia game?
What the fear? You say it now.
What the fear?
There you go. Okay, you have to say it like that.
All right. It's time for What the Fear. Are you ready to bring me way down, deeper into this hole?
Deeper into the boring hole.
The hole of despair, this boring hole of despair. Hashtag your boring holes. Post them on our website.
Didn't you get some from Brent?
We did.
That is so funny.
My cousin Brent went to Boggy Creek, which is a famous documentary faux documentary horror movie.
That's so fabulous.
I thought it was in Arkansas.
I love it when people send us stuff.
Yeah. Boring holes, people. Send us your boring holes. All right.
Ready to go?
Let's get this shit over with.
All right, let's do this. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Your first one is Leporyphobia.
Leporyphobia.
Lepori phobia.
Leporyphobia. That is the fear of your skin flaking off.
Whoa. They would be very afraid of my hands.
Oh, I know. Your poor chemical burn hands.
I know. I get to see the dermatologist in a week, though.
Oh, yay.
So that's awesome.
Am I correct?
No.
Oh.
You're wrong. But I see the leprosy.
Yeah, that was what I was going
There
for.
we go. See? I see you. No, it's... I love just seeing how your mind works with these. It's like giving you an ink blot test.
Yeah, whatever.
But better. No, it's a fear of rabbits.
The fear of... Oh, you know what? Damn it. I should have known that one.
Andy Roddick actually has a really bad phobia of rabbits.
I actually knew that prefix had something to do with rabbits, and I fucked that one up.
Where'd you learn that at?
I don't know. It was in the back of my brain somewhere.
Oh, well... In 2002, he was at a brunch and was confronted face-to-face by an Easter bunny.
Who is this?
Andy Roddick.
The tennis player?
Yes, tennis player fame. And got incredibly uncomfortable and then asked the wait staff at the brunch to make sure that the bunny came nowhere near him.
Why was there a bunny at brunch?
I think it was an Easter brunch.
You still shouldn't have live bunnies jumping around your Easter brunch.
No, not a live bunny. It was a bunny costume, you dork.
Oh, costume.
Oh,
Gotcha.
my gosh.
I was thinking there was bunnies jumping around. I'm like, that is not in keeping with the health codes.
You do know that the Easter bunny's fake, right?
No.
I'm sorry to break this to you.
I'm so sad.
But he's not real. It's just...
Are you sure?
It's just your mom and I.
Oh. I'm so glad you guys still keep up the holidays for me, though.
Right? We like to keep the spirit.
Mom never told me that it was fake, so she still keeps it up.
Stop playing.
What's the next one? I already need a refill on my drink, so I'm gonna go wander over while you're asking me the next one. What's the next one?
I'm trying to read my handwriting.
Come on.
It's rhyophobia.
Spell it.
RHYTIO phobia.
Spell it again.
RHYTIO phobia.
You have to keep talking because I'm still making my drink.
So you need to guess. It's rhinophobia.
Rhinophobia.
You should have been more prepared. Shame.
I drank my drink too fast.
Don't do that. You'll get sloppy by the movies.
I know. That always happens.
I know.
It's also 4 PM.
I know.
This just goes to show my mind,
Ay,
my
ay,
mind
ay.
right now and where it's at. Rhytiophobia. RHYTIO
Yes.
phobia.
Yes. If this were a spelling bee, you would have won. Good job.
Oh, that sounds like somebody's name or something. Like it came from like rice or something like RHY or rheumatoid, the fear of God, these are so hard. There's like nothing. There's like never one where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is easy.
If it was easy, it wouldn't be fun.
You could throw me a bone like every now and then.
Chiclelophobia was a pretty close bone.
Yeah, chiclets.
Yep.
You said bone.
You said to throw you a bone.
Rhytiophobia is the fear of skulls.
No, it's the fear of wrinkles on your hands.
How am I supposed to? How would I ever get even close?
I don't
to that
know.
one? I need to start giving me like one hint.
But you were kind of close with
Joints?
with rheumatoid
With
and
rheumatoid
joints,
and joints.
right? Because those joints are located in your hands.
Are they located other places too?
They might be. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
You just play one on
Not
a
a
podcast.
doctor. I just play one on. No, I don't play a doctor.
I just
on a
play
podcast.
one on a podcast.
I do not. I have never been, nor have I ever claimed to be a doctor. Anyways, so Kristen Bell of
we
Everything
yes,
Famedom.
Yes, we listened to her husband's podcast.
Wife of Dax Shepard.
Yeah.
Of
I like that guy.
Frozen Elsa fame.
Yeah.
I like Dax too.
And Saving Sarah Marshall.
Oh god, that movie is so funny.
I love her.
But she really.
No, really, I love her.
It's okay.
Sorry.
No, I understand. Like if she said that she loved you back, I would be
step aside.
I would be okay because you know what? You could never get her name wrong.
Because it's Kristen.
Right.
You're a dork.
I know. But she hates pruny fingers so much that when she goes into the pools, she'll wear gloves.
That's weird. That's a weird thing.
It's a real dislike for that tactile
pruny feeling?
sensation. Yeah.
Very strange.
Right?
Very strange. Never mind. I don't want to marry Kristen Bell. That's weird.
Oh, yay! There can only be one Kristen. Okay, and last one for you is cray-master-phobia. Cray-master-phobia.
I need to have you start bringing flashcards so you don't have to spell them.
K-R-E-M-A-S-T-R-A phobia. Cray-master-phobia.
The fear of... That is... Gosh. Craymass sounds like Christmas. Craymastrophobia? Like the fear of chewing something, maybe. Chewing?
Like masticating?
Like masticate? No? Nothing?
No.
Not even close?
No, not even.
No teeth involved.
No, I don't even know how you would get this one ever.
Craymastrophobia. The fear of... All right, the fear of buffalo.
I was going to give you a hint, but fine. We'll go with fear of buffalo is wrong.
It's not correct.
I'm going to have to come up with hints to give you, like,
You may have to come up with
hints,
like one or two
because
hints
this is
because
just-
it's getting ridiculous.
It's
now.
getting boring.
It is a little boring.
Just beating
It's getting
you.
very boring hole.
Yeah, boring hole.
Because
We've gone down the boring hole, and we need to recover.
What the fear?
Boring hole. But pop star Kylie Minogue actually has a fear of coat hangers, which is cray-master-phobia.
Coat hangers.
Yeah.
Fear of coat hangers.
She doesn't like to touch them, hear them being put like on their racks or clicking together, and hates how they hide her shoes.
No more wire hangers.
Yes, exactly.
I gotta look that up because I can't remember what movie. Mommie Dearest, right?
Yep.
Mommie Dearest.
She did so
No
good.
more wire hangers.
I would have a fear of coat hangers after.
Do you think maybe she saw that movie?
Maybe
that's why?
Maybe.
That doesn't surprise.
I don't know.
Surprise me.
I'd have to really assess her further.
That'd be a good movie to cover for some. There's some crazy shit in that movie. That
Right.
would be a good one. My mom was just watching whatever happened to Baby Jane, which is another really good old school like scary ass movie. That even she was like, I don't even know why I'm watching this again. It scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Speaking of your mom, she's very intimately aware of our fear for today.
Yes, very aware, and had a really great conversation with her this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'll end up playing any clips from it because I did record it and was able to like upload the clips into Anchor, but we'll see if any of the clips kind of fit, in certain places. But wow, learned a lot about, some stuff that I knew about family history and then some stuff about her history that I didn't know. But yeah, she is very agoraphobic, which is our phobia for today.
It's amazing what you can find out about someone and their history just by asking what they're afraid of.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, so should I go right into our phobia?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So our phobia for today is agoraphobia. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Drew.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Why, yes, I have.
When we were trying to get this podcast off the ground, we had a lot of questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do we make money podcasting? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now just by reading this ad.
Right now?
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now?
That means if you want to get a podcast going and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Join me and Chris and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. We can't wait to hear your podcast. Agoraphobia is a really, really interesting etymology. I found it really, really fascinating. It's from the Greek, as all phobias are, apparently. Is there any that are not?
I don't think so.
Why is it? Why? I wonder why that is. I mean, Greek is a foundation for a lot of our language, but
a lot of these words also came about in modern time.
why weren't they Latin? What is it about the Greek? Maybe it's just a medical thing.
Maybe it just sounds cooler.
I don't know. Weird. But it comes from the Greek agara, I think, is the Greek pronunciation. Which means gathering place or gathering of people. Mm-hmm. Quite literally, this could be translated as the fear of the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And agoraphobia, I think, for our purposes, most people understand it as the fear of open or like crowded places.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
But it's so much fucking bigger than that. Like, I mean, so much more broad and so much bigger than just those specific things, right?
Definitely, yeah. It covers a lot more than that.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this phobia. That I honestly, this is a really interesting one for me because I spent a lot of time growing up with an intimate knowledge of this phobia. So this is a really, really cool one, a cool episode.
So what you need to know is that there's actually two variations that tend to show up of agoraphobia. One is agoraphobia with panic disorder, which is consistent with having more frequent panic attacks than usual. And the other one is just related to agoraphobia with anticipatory anxiety related to future panic attacks. So thinking about having a panic attack in public
brings on
a panic attack.
Absolutely.
Without even being in public.
Right.
there's a huge genetic component to this. And we know that genetics does play a role in the susceptibility for anxiety and phobic disorders to develop. But of course, there's always that environmental piece that plays a role.
Sure.
But research has actually gotten to a point where they can pinpoint genetic susceptibility related to chromosome 1 and 11q. So if you have this susceptibility on these chromosomes, it means that you have a natural disposition towards presenting as agoraphobic, and therefore you're more vulnerable to developing agoraphobia.
So is that specific to agoraphobia?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. So I was assuming there was probably a genetic disposition to being phobic in general, but it's not. It's a disposition towards this particular phobia.
Yep, 1 and 11q. There's apparently something with those chromosomes that if there is a change or something, is way beyond me, obviously, but they can pinpoint it. So you can actually run a genetic test that will tell you how susceptible you are to panic disorder, specifically agoraphobia.
Wow, that's really interesting, because knowing my family history, and we'll talk about that here soon, that makes so much sense. You know, it's kind of a nature nurture thing too, where you see that there's definitely some sort of predisposition.
Yeah.
But there's also triggers.
Right.
There's things environmental triggers.
There's things that get that active.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they lay dormant, and sometimes they never become active, and sometimes they never were there to begin with, but situation creates them. And then from that point on, your genetics are passed down to your future generations, so they become susceptible to that as well.
Wow.
So there is a very strong component with agoraphobia specifically.
Interesting.
It affects to about 6% of the population between the ages of 15 and 35. So about 6.5 million Americans suffer from agoraphobia.
So it's one of those like agoraphobia or those that's a very common phobia. And it does seem to be kind of one of those phobias that's a bit of a catch-all, right? In the mental health field, that it's kind of, you know, people tend to maybe attribute it to people that don't necessarily have it, like or have it. It's maybe another phobia that they kind of relate to agoraphobia.
It has a lot of non-classical presentations.
Right.
But what we do know from the studies that have been done is that it's similar across racial and ethnic groups in the U.S.
Really?
So the experience and the rates of experience of agoraphobia are similar, despite race or ethnicity. And about 40% of the people that suffer from agoraphobia suffer debilitating levels of symptoms.
What was the percentage?
40%.
40% debilitating.
Debilitating symptoms.
Wow.
Debilitating levels.
And explain what debilitating symptoms would be like. Like what does that entail?
That would entail things like never wanting to leave home or safe spaces. Like hypervigilance when out beyond that safe space, needing somebody to walk or carry with them in order to feel safer out of their safe space. It could really prevent you from doing a lot of things in life, like
just
working.
Normal everyday
just
stuff.
everyday living.
So the concept of a shut-in, a lot of times, is related to, as opposed to like if you're handicapped and you're a shut-in, that's one thing. But if you're a shut-in that is healthy, other than you're not leaving home, is almost always associated with agoraphobia, correct?
No, I can't say almost. I can't say almost always, but it would be worth exploring further whether or not that symptom of being a shut-in is related to anxiety or not. And then you can go from there and see if it actually is agoraphobia.
Who else is going to stay home all the time and not ever want to leave their house if they're not phobic of the outside world, right?
I mean, germaphobes.
Well, that's true. But can't that present itself as agoraphobia as well? Like you don't want to go out because you're afraid of interacting with people?
But think about how this would differ, because if you were a germaphobe and not agoraphobic, if somebody from the outside world were to come into your world or bring you outside goods from inside, you would have to decontaminate them in order to feel safe, right? True. Whereas an agoraphobic they
wouldn't care if you came inside.
As persistent about that because inside. You're in their safe space.
Right.
So that there's some differences, which is why you have to look which is why the professionals have to look further into things and kind of figure out what's the root here, what's really kind of causing this anxiety that presents as this cluster of symptoms.
So what is the main characteristic of somebody who's aggro or agoraphobic? What's the reason why they have a hard time in crowds, in open spaces? There's a certain thing I'm trying to pull out of you.
Mm-hmm. I know.
What is that thing?
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
42% of the folks that are diagnosed with agoraphobia had a history of real or feared separation from their primary caregivers. So we're talking about a large impact of the aftermath of unresolved separation anxiety.
Primary caregivers as in like parents?
Parents.
And what about the other half? Because I think there's that, right? So there's this separation anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you feel isolated and alone. You're scared to be in that situation. But there's also the fear of something happening while you're in those situations,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which I think is even a larger majority
For sure.
of agoraphobics, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we see the other agoraphobics who struggle to be out in public places because of a feared response while out there. So for instance, I'm out in public and maybe I'm feeling nauseous and I'm afraid that I'm going to throw up and that's going to be an embarrassing thing to happen.
And so it's interesting. So diving into a little bit of my family situation, right? So my mother is agoraphobic, diagnosed as long as since she was in her, I guess, early 20s, late teens, early 20s, she has suffered from agoraphobia. And I would say debilitating in many instances.
It definitely affects her quality of life.
Definitely. Yeah, even to this day, although she's definitely made great strides and much better
Absolutely.
than when she was younger. But one of the things that even came out when we talked, when her and I talked today, was the first time she had a panic attack was in a mall, which malls are horrible for agoraphobics because they're open, big spaces. There's
people and things everywhere.
There's sparse people around though. It's not always crowded.
Right.
It's very sparse and it's just wide open, right? So second floor of a mall was the first time that she remembers having a panic attack. And then when she finally realized that she had developed this phobia, she realized that that embarrassment feel, right? The feel of having that panic attack compounded on itself. So every time she was in a situation where she had a panic attack before, she was fearful that she would have a panic attack again.
Right.
And that's what compounds itself over and over and over again. Every time, right? If it's in a public space, she had a panic attack at the mall. Every time she goes to the mall, she fears she's going to have that.
And
every time she's in, walks across a parking lot. If she had a panic attack before, she's now fearful that she's going to have a panic attack again.
And have to experience those symptoms and those feelings. And, your mom is very self-conscious too of people around her judging her already.
Well, that comes from this. It's not chicken. I think it's chicken or the egg.
Right.
Because it all kind of comes back on itself. Because even things like being in a restaurant, right? So one of the things I remember my mother doing in a restaurant was she would have this esophageal kind of like tick where she would start almost like gagging, like, kind of like a real weird kind of like
guttural reaction
when we were in restaurants. And speaking to her today and talking to her about it, that was a panic attack in restaurants when she was, and she would always want to be seated next to a wall because that was very important. If she ever got seated in the middle of a restaurant,
walls seem to be safe for her.
Always.
If she can have a wall or a person that kind of creates a barrier.
Big time.
Anything. It feels a little safer for her.
Absolutely. So anytime she felt exposed.
Ooh, I love that.
That was a very, very big deal. So if she felt exposed in the middle of a restaurant, like seated in the middle, that was a very big deal. But the esophageal thing, she would when she was eating, she would start to get that public, I don't know if it's a fear of
anxiety,
of whatever it was, but it would kind of flesh itself out in this very physical way.
Right.
Which I haven't seen her do that in a long time, but she used to do it a lot when I was a kid.
And we know that anxiety is a physical reaction. You know, it's not just a mental reaction, it's a physical reaction. And gender plays an important role in agoraphobia because women tend to be diagnosed more. And one of the hypotheses around this is that it might be that it's related to mothers giving daughters mixed messages about becoming separate individuals from themselves. So maybe some enmeshment issues with mom may have created kind of an insecurity with separating oneself and being kind of solely responsible for whatever happens.
Oh, there's some crazy family stuff there that I can get into. I mean,
you know, the physical.
There's also a hormonal issue probably
right.
too, right? I mean, there's probably, but she always felt like there was a hormonal aspect to it.
There has to be, because our hormones tie in so tightly with what goes on with our neurochemistry in our brain. And our gut is so connected to our brain. And I know your mom has gut issues too.
We just talked about that. We talked about that today too.
Exactly. And so all of these things are at play here. And you can't just say like, well, one is the other. It's all of them at once at play, setting the stage for, you know, this anxiety response to kind of enact itself.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's what's really interesting about we talked about the genetic aspect a little bit. So my grandmother, she definitely had agoraphobia. But it was the 1940s and 50s and whatever. And it wasn't, you know, I'm sure well known, and it wasn't, you know, actively diagnosed the right way. But she would always sit in the back, make them sit in the back of church so she could escape. Escape was a big deal, right? Feeling that security of being able to slip out of a situation in public, right? In social situations. She was not a fan of social situations. During my mother's high school years, she ended up at a hospital in Nashville. And my mom still doesn't know exactly what for, but she was gone for a significant period of time.
And back then, mental health was not exactly,
right.
You know,
you didn't broadcast it.
No.
You know, my grandfather was the president of a bank and a very, you know, wealthy, well-to-do kind of guy in town. So I'm sure it was, we're going to send you off to this hospital to get better. And I'm sure it was some sort of nervous breakdown, but it was related, I'm sure, to this.
But I wonder,
you know,
how your mom's relationship with her mom and her mom's relationship with her own anxiety impacted your mom's relationship with her anxiety.
Right? Watching it and seeing it firsthand.
And then experiencing that separation anxiety, because as a person who is wildly anxious myself, when you're anxious, you're very inward. And others can perceive that as neglect or distancing.
Distance or coldness.
Coldness.
Right.
And then as a child, you're more likely to reflect it inward, like, well, it must be something with me.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes you more
God, that triggers
anxious.
something something else we talked about that was totally separated, but I'll have to talk to her about that too. But so we had grandmother, right? My grandmother. So my mom's mom and her sister. So her sister was so agoraphobic that my mother had to go help take care of her up in Kentucky when her husband, they were newly married, had to have a tumor removed out of his nose, and it was in the hospital for a few days. She refused to drive. So my mom had to drive up and help take care of her during that period of time. This was before I think my mom even had those symptoms.
Sure.
But she ended up being very agoraphobic all the way through her life to this day, and being she had much more of those kind of housebound kind of deal for big periods of time.
And when life is more stressful, those symptoms tend to escalate too, and you tend to see more withdrawal and more isolation and less ability to go outside the comfort zone, because you've literally got no emotional spoons left, because you're just so anxious all the time that you spend all of those anxiety spoons just trying to feel safe in your own self.
It's crazy. It's a very crazy concept from people who have never experienced it. But as talking to my mom, I realized that I have had a whole plethora of these similar experiences and never had had never put my finger on the fact that that was what was going on.
Oh gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I had never thought about this in terms of like things that I had experienced in college. So when I was in college, I always had to sit in the back of the room. Like, if I came into a classroom and there was only one seat left in the front or in the middle, I would skip class. And if I absolutely had to make attendance or something, and I sat in the middle, it affected my gastrointestinal tract and
But you're
my stomach.
such a social person. What was it about those particular classroom situations that was so much more vulnerable than going out to, a club or a party or whatever and
fear of embarrassment. So
because that was a quiet setting.
Silence, quiet.
If someone could hear your stomach, they'd think you farted. They think you're gross. You're the dude
that was just a symptom though,
right?
Because the fear had come before that somehow. So I don't know where that came from, but that was just a symptomatic thing that came up later that made it even worse, right? Because then panic,
right?
When your stomach starts gurgling,
like, oh my gosh,
yeah, your stomach starts gurgling and you get panic, right? And so that's where the fear comes up. So my mom was relating a story. She gave me 2 or 3 different stories of like her worst experiences
with
ever.
agoraphobia.
And she even said like, great, thanks for bringing all this shit up. Like now
this is good for her. It's minor exposure therapy. And, you really should have put her in the hand of a trained therapist. But I'm really interested to hear that call conversation.
So the conversation actually was really great. Maybe, if we had a Patreon, that'd be great. I could just play the whole conversation. People could listen to it. Maybe we should do that at some point. But she was talking about how Long Beach Airport in Southern California. I don't know if you ever flew out of Long Beach.
No.
But Long Beach was very similar to Ontario. Did you ever fly out of Ontario?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay. And what did you have to do at Ontario Airport? Do you remember?
You had to park and you walked to the gate.
And then where'd you then what about the?
Oh, then you walked out onto the runway.
You had to walk out onto the tarmac, right? So if you have ever experienced that. Walking out on the tarmac thing, it's you get checked in, you give your ticket, and then you walk out and you walk up the stairs up to the airplane. Long Beach Airport, my mom was going somewhere by herself, so my dad had to leave her at the gate before 9/11. So she walked her to the gate, but then she had to walk the tarmac by herself.
Right.
And she remembers sitting there waiting for the plane to arrive, and the fear of walking out on the tarmac was just pumping in her brain, right? Like just reverberating. It was just this constant conversation she was having internally about the fear of just what's going to happen between the gate and the stairs.
Right.
That's how fearful she is of walking in an open space, right? So when time came for her to go out onto the tarmac, she stopped right at the gate. And wouldn't walk any further, and then
she was just frozen.
She was frozen, which was another thing. That's a very big thing that happens.
An anxiety
she literally
response,
just freeze.
yeah. It's a fight or flight instinct. So
what she did was there was a couple that was walking, that had just walked out behind her, and she nudged them and said, "Hey," like she explained to them. This was probably in the late 70s, early 80s. Explained to them, "Hey, I'm agoraphobic. Can I walk?
Wow.
Can I walk with you to the stairs?" And they looked at her like she was an alien, because back then nobody really knew what the hell this shit was.
People weren't educated.
They weren't educated as well, and so, but they did. They let her, walk, with her. But she said the whole time I just wanted to grab onto both of them. But she's like, I just walked behind them with my head down and made it to the stairs and then got on the plane.
I would love to explore further, like just how. I mean, I know obviously she's got a genetic predisposition that makes her more vulnerable to this, but just what things activate her and where it began. And I mean, I guess it began at the mall, but I just would love to dive more.
But it began way earlier.
Right.
I mean, it began in various forms. Obviously, like you said, I think there's a little bit of nature versus nurture. This is a genetic thing that's in the family. My uncle is a preacher, at a church in Kentucky, but he had agoraphobia, and he actually defeated or
Kenneth?
Or dealt Kenneth dealt with the phobia through.
That's a good guy.
Through literally like just diving into the worst possible thing you could do, which is standing in front of 800 people or whatever.
Right. And because this phobia comes from genetics, experiences, and like different psychological traits, that may have worked really well for him, but it might not be a great treatment for someone like your mom.
Right. Right.
Different strokes for different folks, so to say, But one thing that I did discover while I was researching this that kind of got me thinking about your mom was benzodiazepines, Xanax, often prescribed as an anti-anxiety medication for panic disorders, right? But when you try to get off of it and decrease your use of it, it actually increases symptoms of agoraphobia.
So, it's interesting. My mom has always been very skeptical not skeptical, but very scared of being dependent on drugs. So a really interesting example between her and her sister kind of dove into that and needed much higher doses and a lot of various medications to stabilize
we know benzos are short term
to stabilize her phobia. My mother has never taken much more than, I don't think I can remember very many times that she ever took a whole pill.
Right.
So she was prescribed Xanax. You know what she was prescribed initially, though? It was
Valium.
Darvocet.
Oh, Darvocet.
Oh, Valium as well, but that was later. But Darvocet initially, which is now, I believe, been...
As a Schedule 1?
It's been... it's been banned by the FDA. I don't think it's even available anymore. For various reasons. So
yeah, this phobia is definitely the most debilitating. And even when you try to get help through medication or therapy... it only shows about a 90% success rate, which is less than others.
Because it's not about, and this is what she said too. It's not about, she doesn't believe that the Xanax has much effect on her anymore because she literally only takes a half a pill every time. She believes it's totally placebo.
Yeah.
It is the thing that she does when she knows that she needs to calm down.
Right.
Because it's all about calming yourself down. When she's had terrible panic attacks, this story is terrible. She had an ex-business partner who was actually her best friend at the time. And they were helping run a jogathon, which was a fundraiser at my school when I was a kid, elementary school. And my mom, and it was out in a big field, obviously, the school field. So it was out in a big field. And she had told this woman, I won't mention her name, Beth, that she was, she knew about her phobia, right? So there was something before the jogathon. She had to walk across the field with Beth to go to the other side, to go to the table or whatever, the fence. And so they walked halfway across the field, and Beth decided it would be hilarious to run away and leave her in the middle of the field with nobody around. This is one of the experiences she said was her absolute greatest fear in the world, right? You're surrounded by all these other PTA moms, which are already horrible jackals, horrible hyenas to begin with.
Right.
And then she leaves you in the middle to be that embarrassment feeling,
to be susceptible to the embarrassment.
To this feeling that you get. And she said she shut down completely. Like she just froze, panic attack set in. She believes she sat down in the middle of the field and just like didn't know, she may have cried.
Your brain literally shuts off everything else and goes into panic mode and goes into emergency fight flight mode. Like it dumps so much into your brain and so many neurotransmitters go and so much happens all at once that you do shut down. And everything. It just debilitates everything. It is so debilitating. And so the fact that this phobia is so debilitating for so many is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy. So she after that, she was helped out by somebody else, but her friend was just laughing off to the side, thought it was hilarious.
Which is not cool. I mean, if somebody's having a phobic level reaction, that's nothing to, poo-poo about. No. It's very serious, and it's causing very serious, very real symptoms.
And honestly, like, I feel like if there's people who have phobias out there, and they have debilitating phobias, my mom is a really good case study for somebody who has really learned to find devices to function well within her phobia.
She's got tools.
She's really learned to have tools. Parking lots. are terrible for my mom.
Right.
So if I park with my mom, I'll forget even now. But,
She's asked me to walk with her before.
But yeah, she'll grab your arm and she'll walk with you across the parking lot, across it until you get to the sidewalk or you get to the other side. Because that's still a very real thing for her. But if she's by herself, she's going grocery shopping. She's learned that if she finds a shopping cart, she'll park next to the shopping cart. If she has the shopping cart in her hand,
it feels
like she has something to walk with. If she has to walk without a shopping cart, she'll wait till a car passes and she'll walk along behind the car to go across the street.
Wow. She has so many mechanisms to
deal with it.
To overcome and kind of do everyday activities. But I wonder how many things she's said no to just because of the anticipation of getting into a situation that might enact this.
I'm sure back in the day it was
agoraphobia.
really bad. And alcohol plays a part too, and certain things we're talking about gut and the things
brain health
we put in our body. So gut health, brain health, like you were saying, is a big deal. So if you have alcohol the day before, right, and you get super drunk the night before, the next day you're going to have a bad day. And she'll tell you that. Like, she'll be like, if I get drunk the night before, I'm going to have a bad phobia day the next day. I'm going to have panic attacks. I'm going to have problems if I go out of the house. I know that.
Her brain's ability to moderate those panic symptoms is just reduced. It's reduced after alcohol consumption or maybe something emotional that drains you of it. And you don't have the faculties left to kind of hold back that panic. And so it overrides your rational system. And it's very alarming and exhausting. Yeah. It's so tiring.
Having to deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and this, not to digress, but as far as the development of these things, it seems like you were saying there's some genetic predisposition. And there's some things that I've realized now, like I have some of that myself, right? Like we talked about. Now I think I've had the ability because I live in a time where we're educated a little better about these things, and we can kind of look back on them and I can go, oh, that makes sense. I had this thing. My mom, though, she looks back and she goes, well, you know what? Like this instance or these environmental factors help lead up to this thing. Like she was saying with her sister had a kidney issue in high school, where she had to go to the bathroom all the time. And so in high school, she had to constantly be excusing herself to go to the bathroom, right? Which is an embarrassing thing.
Especially as you get into pre-adolescence,
right?
And
As you're in those really tough times, right? And my mom also had a lot of those tough times.
Shame monster development, right?
Yeah, there's something in there.
Well, in the research it says 15 to 35 is that kind of age group, and think about that. That's for women specifically. That's a huge shifting period of hormones and brain chemistry, as you go into menstruation and then you fall out, and there's a lot going on, and that definitely impacts things. So
there's more than these things can just develop from these very environmental situations that happen, these kind of crisis periods that happen, and I think it's really interesting. Too, she felt like after she got a hysterectomy in like the early 80s after I was born, that she felt like her symptoms got better. Which again, hormonal.
I'd have to look further.
There's so many different factors.
There is. That's why phobias can't be, phobias and panic disorders and anxiety disorders can't be pinned down to one thing. There is a genetic predisposition that makes you more vulnerable. There's also a lot that has to do with environment that plays into your body and your brain's reaction to things that makes you susceptible to having a panic disorder. And then something very traumatic happens, oh crap, who wouldn't develop some sort of way to cope with it, So
even more.
This is
There's so much that we could. I mean, I could talk about this for so long.
I know it really hits home for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and honestly, like I've felt that panic attack feeling. I've had that feeling before, and it's a really strange thing to look back on it and go, oh, that's what I was feeling. Like,
do any of your other siblings struggle?
Oh my gosh, yes. My sister is definitely agoraphobic. No doubt about it. My brother probably has it to a certain extent.
Keith does?
I think so, to a certain extent. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that kind of fleshes itself out in different ways because I think all of us grew up with it, so we have an understanding of it. So we we've been able to kind of self-treat it in different ways.
But Heath and Heather grew up with it alone with your mom, essentially, for a while.
Not really.
Not really?
No, not really. I mean, they were babies when she married, my dad. So
I was trying to think of
they're very young.
The genetic impact.
But they definitely had it at a time when she was younger, and it was much more acute.
She was divorced and a single mom, and that increases all of the symptoms and everything. So I wonder if that. But
even when I was young, like in my and we've had conversations about this, my siblings and I. But when I was little, we'd be driving down the freeway, the 5 freeway in Southern California, and she would start grabbing her shoulder, and you knew that she was having a panic attack, and she would pull over on the freeway on the side of the road,
terrifying,
and have to sit there and wait and wade through her panic attack, and fumble through to a bottle of and pull out a Xanax, and then calm herself down and then start up again.
She's been through so much,
and then there were times she'd have to call. She would be so frozen that she had to call my dad to come pick her up. I mean, those were things that, and so she has come so far, now that she's older, she's really learned to deal with it in so many different ways.
It's amazing.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, great phobia information, I think.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting stuff just to find out how prevalent this is and what happens in the mind.
I even asked my mom about movies too. So now transition into movies.
Yes.
I was like, "What movies do you think have really
bring it out in you,
bring out this concept for you?" And she's like, "I can't think of any that really really hit home as far as nailed what I felt or demonstrated it properly." So I found though a few movies that dealt with the phobia very directly, and we're going to dive into those now. So our movies, I'm going to breeze through these because honestly, our content.
You struggled with it.
It just there wasn't anything growing up with it, growing up with movies. I'm sorry, growing up with movies.
Oh man.
Growing up with
agoraphobia.
around agoraphobia and knowing kind of what it was. I never saw it in its most extreme form, which I think these movies kind of play on. The whole concept of the agoraphobic shut-in, right? The person who won't leave their house. But I did experience it to a certain degree because there were days my mom didn't leave the house for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, you experienced it.
So I did experience it, but it wasn't the same. But I did find a couple of movies that I liked.
For the viewers.
Yeah. I did have a couple of honorable mentions that I wanted to bring up. Just some real quick ones. So the quick ones, there's always, I think we're going to do the quick ones. And then there's the one that I'm going to kind of focus on for honorable mentions. And then the feature presentation.
Okay.
That makes sense. That's kind of where we're going nowadays.
Seems balanced.
But as far as a couple that came to mind and you've seen some of these horror movie / phobia articles where they hook a phobia up with a movie. They go, "Oh, this is the best movie for."
Yeah, I sent you one.
Yeah, I had already read the one that you sent me because I've gone through a bunch of these because they're good. They're kind of good to kind of get
a handle on it.
A basic kind of understanding of where some of these movies might be. I don't think they always do a great job of picking the right movies. Which is why I didn't pick either of these movies, but I kind of understood where they were going with them.
Right.
One of the honorable mentions that I saw pop up in one of these lists was The Hills Have Eyes by Wes Craven, which living in Nevada. This is it's our home horror movie.
Wasn't it filmed here?
I don't know if they ended up filming it here, but it was definitely supposed to take place in the Nevada desert I'm guessing down near the Air Force Base Vegas area, not up here in beautiful northern Nevada that we live in.
Very different. People, look it up. Whoa. Hey, whiskey got your back. Or am I that funny?
No, I just had a vision of everybody thinking Reno is Vegas.
Everybody does.
When they're like, "Oh, I'm coming into Vegas," and then they think they can come visit you, but you're 8 hours.
You're like, cool.
Away.
Spend your day getting to me.
Yeah, it's like going to Los Angeles and being like, "Oh, you live in San Francisco? I'm going to come visit you."
Cool, I'll come visit you in San Francisco.
Yeah, it doesn't
it's not an entire state away.
And I inhaled a bunch of whiskey. But But 1977's Hills Have Eyes, directed by Wes Craven. Most of you have seen this movie. It's a good one. There's a great. Was
scene?
it? No. Joe Bob Briggs does a great breakdown of this for the Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Horror marathon, I belielieve.
Does he?
Where he has
this?
the main actor. What is his name? I can't even think of it right now. Anyways, fantastic. Check it out. Again, Shudder, Joe Bob Briggs. But the sheer horror of Wes Craven's... So this was written by Michael Rothman from Consequence of Sound. Mm-hmm. Put it this way. The sheer horror of Wes Craven's 1977 masterpiece, The Hills Have Eyes, is how the situation feels so inescapable.
Right.
For 89 minutes, we watch a poor Midwestern family suffer at the hands of a group of savages who come and go in the middle of the Nevada desert. This is their home, you see. The expansive, forgotten sands of America. Apparently that's our state.
Woo!
The forgotten sands of America.
It is 80% federal land.
That otherwise would be barren, desolate, and eerily quiet. Those suffering from agoraphobia probably don't imagine terror of this magnitude when it comes to open spaces such as these, which is why the film is paramount to their recovery, or perhaps their ultimate demise. Come to think of it, there's no way anyone with that phobia walks away from this film feeling cured. But numb? Maybe. Absolutely.
Yeah, from watching all the abuse. It's awful.
So that was the way one
Torture
person
porn.
put that one. And I can see it. I can see that. I mean, being out in the middle of the desert and being in someplace...
It's kind of like Open Water.
Right, which is the next one.
Geez.
Nice transition.
Yeah.
Did you even know that?
See, no, you've taught me well.
So Open Water, which I don't even know what year that came out. I didn't put that down. But if you haven't seen Open Water, it is fucking terrifying. And I didn't want to include it for agoraphobia because there's so many other phobias that this movie like elicits. But gosh,
Fear of sharks, fear of drowning,
fear of water. Thalassophobia. There's so many things that you could be afraid of in this movie. Yes, agoraphobia is one of them. And it would probably be absolutely terrifying for an agoraphobic. I agree. But I cut out another quote. Jim Varell from Paste Magazine says, Open Water is one of the most terrifying premises I can imagine, phobia or not. A pair of divers are left behind their guide boat and stranded in the open ocean with no idea of what direction they should even head. That's true powerlessness.
Yeah.
And once fatigue begins to set in...
And vulnerability.
Right?
I can't even swim. I can't tread water. That's my nightmare.
You'd be dead.
I would be dead in 2.5 seconds.
And once fatigue begins to set in, the sharks begin to circle. It's
my
hard to
gosh.
imagine not completely...
Because you give off like pheromones and stuff and they can smell it in you.
It's hard to imagine not to be completely turning to despair. The open ocean is the ultimate terror for an agoraphobic when one realizes the sheer scale of the space underneath you, above you, and around you. And there could be, and is, anything down there.
Right. I don't like that idea either.
No. I don't think anybody would.
No.
And honestly, like, that's why, like, to me...
That's terrifying.
Like,
that's why I've never
agoraphobia?
seen the movie.
Yes. Oh, dude, it's honestly, it was one of the hardest movies I've ever watched. And I'll never forget, I watched it at my aunt's house in Minnesota. Randomly, I think I was with my ex-wife. We were up there, I think when Hank was like a little baby.
Oh, maybe
I
when you
remember
guys were
watching
driving
it.
back here?
We were on our way to Reno. But we went up to Minnesota first to visit. And I will never forget watching it because I remember being like...
Deeply
nope,
uncomfortable?
Nope.
That's a whole lot of nope.
Nope. Fuck you.
Nope for dinner, nope for lunch, nope for
And I was
breakfast.
a surfer who has actually physically been circled by sharks. Literally happened to me. One time when I was about 16 years old, I was out surfing and got circled by blue sharks, 3 of them.
I'm good.
And it was a very terrifying experience. I can't imagine being without anybody as far as the eye can see and being circled and just being out in the middle of nowhere. Fuck no.
Hard pass.
But that brings us to our actual honorable mention for today, which is the 2015 movie Intruders.
Today's offering, meatloaf, green beans almondine, and apple cobbler.
I don't know how I'm going to do this without you. Your brother's already approved this. He's taking care of everything. I just need a signature.
Are you gonna keep the place?
Of course. This is my home.
Find her. I need to know where you keep the money. Take her upstairs. Do you see our faces? I really think we're just gonna let you go. You hear that? Vince! Get out of here! What is this place? Something tells me we're not the first guests here.
You're not like this.
You have no idea what I'm like.
You haven't left this house in over 10 years?
What's your game?
You'll understand soon.
So Intruders was originally named Shut In, and apparently it's also gone by the name Deadly Home.
It had many identities.
It had many identities because apparently they were terrible titles to choose because there was like tons of other movies with the same titles around the same time. So I guess the next, like the year after Shut In came out, there was a Naomi Watts movie that came out in 2016 that was fucking terrible apparently, but so I guess they changed their name because of that, so they started calling it Intruders.
Weird.
But it's a 2015 American horror thriller directed by Adam Schindler and written by T.J. Simfel and David White. Film stars Beth Riesgraf, Rory Culkin. What's his name's Culkin's brother?
Macaulay,
thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name.
Because it sounds like a mouthful
Younger
of
brother.
marbles. Macaulay.
Martin Starr from Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, yeah. He was weird in this.
Yeah, he was creepy in this. And then and a guy named Jack Kesey. And the like I said, original title was Shut In. But basically, what'd you think of this movie, Chris? I'm interested to hear because you watched this one fairly intently.
It took a weird turn, and I'll go ahead and summarize it. A woman appears to be deathly afraid of leaving her home after the recent death of her brother. Mm-hmm. Gets confronted by three strangers who break in because they hear she's got some dough hidden in her house now.
They think she's at her brother's funeral, too, because it's during her brother's funeral, but she won't leave the house, so she didn't go.
So she didn't go. Right. So
they thought they were breaking in without her there.
There's kind of the evidence of, agoraphobia interfering with this woman's life, her being able to attend her brother's funeral. That, would be a big deal.
We know she hasn't left the house in 10 years.
She hasn't left the house in 10 years. They tell us that. There's a scene where the three break in. She's there. They kind of torture her a little bit by dragging her out on the front porch, and she has a panic attack and a very visible physical reaction.
They're basically telling her to leave. Like, go, run away. And she's like,
they don't want to kill. They don't want to hurt her. They just want her money, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, things escalate. And spoiler alert, weird turn. She's got a torture basement where apparently she and her brother have been trying to reenact the abuse that they suffered at the hand of their father in the basement.
So so here's what happens. So these guys end up getting trapped in the basement.
Really elaborate traps.
Very elaborate.
She
very,
goes
very
from very weak and very meek,
feeble to
all of a sudden powerful.
She almost has a little bit of a split personality or something that takes over.
It's just that safe feeling, like she finally feels safe because she's got the control.
And she traps. She killed one of them, and then she drags him downstairs to the basement, and then the other guys realize, "Where's our buddy?" And he's down in the basement. And they run down there, and she traps him in this very elaborate basement trap, including a mock of her bedroom upstairs, which is really weird
because it's a reenactment of the trauma that they suffered at the hand of their father.
Yes. So her brother, who had died of pancreatic cancer, apparently had what we find out is that father was abusive,
right?
Sexually, I'm sure, and physically. So brother ended up killing their dad. And brother and sister, Conrad and Anna, end up reenacting, bringing in abusers. So they're torturing people who are child abusers.
Right. They somehow get them into their home, and then they trap them in this room, and then they do the same thing that they did to, well,
not necessarily the same thing they did their father.
They kill them.
But they're doing like vengeance, right? So this is a very home invasion type horror movie, but then it takes this weird like revenge
and they
turn.
never really tell us why the sister's a part of it. Like, does she enjoy it? Because there was a part where
you can tell she's smirking.
She broke down though.
Yeah, but she's smirking at the beginning. She enjoys it.
I don't know, but I think there were parts of it that she enjoyed, but then there were other parts of it that maybe was the brother's responsibility, so she felt less comfortable.
We missed the Rory Culkin part a little bit, because Rory Culkin was her delivery. She had this delivery guy who would bring her food every day.
Right. Who was kind of like the scout for
he wasn't. He wasn't scout. No. He was her friend, and he went to the funeral of her brother and was waiting for her there. And then we find out that he had just mentioned that she had offered him all this money after her brother died to his brother.
Oh, gotcha.
I believe his brother was one of the three guys that came and broke in, and so he didn't intend any of this to happen.
No,
so
I knew.
So anyways, so the Rory Culkin character is really kind of innocent in all of it,
right?
And I can't remember if
he's guilty by association.
I don't remember if he got out. I think he finally escaped. She killed all the rest of the guys, but she let him escape. And at the very end, she lights the whole place on fire.
Right.
So we realized that she had been there with her brother, torturing abusers.
But why does she light the place on fire?
Oh, because she had just killed all these dudes.
She's killed all these dudes, and she finally
had gotten over her agoraphobia.
This like relief, this like my house is no longer my safe space, or whatever happened. And so she was
very confident. She was very confident when she walked out, because I think her brother was the killer before, and maybe she was the killer now, or
I think something like that happened, or I don't know. I gotta say, not how it works in treatment.
It was not probably an accurate depiction of the actual mental health scenario, but it was a really interesting twist. And for a home invasion movie that I'm not a huge fan of, like The Strangers and all those, they don't really do it for me. This one kind of had an interesting twist. I liked it. I liked the twist to it. And that's why when I watched it, I was like, well, hot damn, like, this isn't too bad. This is one that we should probably, throw out there. So if you haven't seen it, 2015's Intruders or Shut In. When we search on Amazon Prime, it comes up as Shut In. But when I search anywhere else, it's Intruders.
Agoraphobic's Revenge.
Agoraphobic's Revenge.
That's what we'll call this one.
But that brings us to our feature presentation.
And now our feature presentation.
What turns on a killer is the suffering and death of another human being. And as his determination builds to take another life, he plans in obsessive detail what props he'll bring, what knots he'll tie. Let me ask you guys something. What turns you on?
A criminal psychiatrist.
There's a serial killer out there who strangled 3 women. He's going to do it again.
A homicide detective.
Would you work with us on this?
You're kidding, right?
I do not want you discussing this case with her in any shape, way, or form.
It's the Boston Strangler.
You telling me this guy's copycatting a serial killer's been dead for
20 years?
You're looking for an intelligent white male, 20 to 30 years old, socially functional.
Everything's different. Different guy.
He's switched from DeSalvo to Bianchi and Bono, the hillside strangler.
One man is copying the most notorious killers in history, one at a time.
He's sending you letters like he's daring us to nail him.
If he wants to be famous, he has to be caught.
I'm death and life to you, Doc.
We know that Mr. Cullen was safe in San Quentin last night, so how come his book shows up under the mattress?
Together, 2 women must stop him.
The man who has killed 5 women in this city was just in your apartment.
Before he kills again.
All I know to do is change your locks, tighten up your security, and pray.
Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter, and Harry Connick Jr. in a deadly game of cat
Here, kitty.
and mouse. Copycat.
And our feature presentation is a movie that I had never seen before, that I'd always wanted to see because I love serial killer movies, but I'd never seen it before. And it's Copycat. It's 1995's psychological thriller, not technically a horror movie. Fuck
blah,
you.
blah, blah. Suck it up, Feardos.
Yeah. Psychological thrillers to me are as horror adjacent as you can get, so I'm calling it a horror movie. Psychological thriller Copycat, 1995, directed by John Amiel. Composer of this, though, was really good. I love the music in this. And the composer was Christopher Young, who, this is for you, Metal Chris. Christopher Young, and Metal Chris is obsessed with horror scores.
He's our resident horror score
expert.
Expert, yeah.
Yeah.
Sommelier.
Our horror score sommelier. Christopher Young is, if you know anything about horror scores, you know he's kind of a legend. He did Hellraiser, he did Species, Drag Me to Hell, The Grudge, and a bunch of other big blockbuster movies too. He did the music for this, and it's really good, and it actually does really help the feel of the movie. I literally noticed it, and I don't always notice the music, but I did
You
notice
noticed that it made you tense, or that you were feeling the emotions in your body because of the music.
Yeah. So this movie is Sigourney Weaver, who, fuck yeah, as Helen Hudson, who is basically a criminal psychologist. And we have Holly Hunter, also awesome, as an Inspector Monahan. We have Dermot Mulroney, who plays Reuben Goetz. And then we have Harry Connick Jr.
Me freaking yeah.
As a serial killer, or as a killer, as a psycho killer, Daryl Lee Cullum. And it's a great. I love Harry Connick.
It's a good cast.
He is so good. He's such a good actor.
He was so good in this too. Like I was pretty surprised at how attractive he is as a fake serial killer.
As a crazy killer.
Yeah.
Crazy redneck serial killer.
Yep.
I think this may have been one of his very first big kind of movie roles, if I remember right. And then he did quite a few after this.
What if Harry Connick Jr. is one of the Masked Singers?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Okay, never mind.
No, I'm not buying that. No. We shouldn't be watching that reality show anyway.
No, I love it. I'm addicted. You're addicted too. Anyways.
So Copycat. Let me give you a quick rundown. After giving a guest lecture on criminal psychology at a local university, Dr. Helen Hudson, our Sigourney Weaver character, a respected field expert on serial killers, is cornered in the restroom of the lecture hall by one of her previous subjects, Daryl Lee Cullum, who kills a police officer and brutally attacks her. Helen then becomes severely agoraphobic as a result, sealing herself inside an expensive high-tech apartment, conducting her entire life from behind a computer screen and assisted by a friend, Andy.
If you don't mind, I have a very busy day.
Well, man, it's a hell of an apartment you got here. Hell of an apartment. I guess the books you wrote about these scumbags must have paid pretty well. Now, we can't afford to pay you your usual fee, but if you would be so kind as to look...
I don't want these.
Would you be more comfortable looking at them downtown?
I don't want to see these here.
Well, I'll drive you if you prefer.
Andy.
Andy! Andy!
All right, it's okay. Breathe, I'm here. Breathe.
Should we call the paramedics?
No. Just a good old-fashioned panic attack. She hyperventilates till she passes out, then her breathing returns to normal, and she's fine.
What'd we do?
She's agoraphobic.
She's afraid of spiders, too?
She hasn't been out of the house in over a year.
She's okay, though, right?
She's fine. Half an hour, she'll be singing like a lark.
Tell her we're sorry to have bothered her.
Did you want her to look at those? If you really do, leave them. I'll make sure they're safe.
Tell her to call me if she feels like it.
So then, when we pick back up, she's agoraphobic, and there's a lot of scenes where, you know, in this beginning of this movie where after she has this traumatic experience where she's almost killed, she then is locked in her big fancy apartment.
She goes to her safe space.
And she cannot even walk out the door to get the newspaper. Like, the newspaper was too far away from her door, and she had to crawl.
She's just like, fuck it.
And they're seeing tunnel vision and all that stuff, which my mom said she never saw. She said she just would get frozen.
Some people experience different symptoms.
Very different, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But she's still fascinated by her field of study, right? So
which is fascinating.
So she starts calling the investigators, basically leaving not telling who she is and saying, I have information about this killer, blah, blah, blah. And they're investigating multiple different crimes, and she's saying that they're all related. Mm-hmm. And finally...
They listen.
Yeah, finally, our Holly Hunter, homeboy, Dermot Mulrooney. That's a really hard name to say.
Dermot Mulrooney.
Dermot Mulrooney. Finally decide to go visit her. And she's like, I'm too old for this shit. Ain't getting back in the game.
But secretly she's like, man, I'm so pumped. Because I'm ready to get back in this.
She can't leave her house, but she has an agoraphobic reaction, which we played in that clip. That was when they showed up. And eventually, right, she starts investigating this with them. They start coming over to her house. They start investigating these things with her. And finally, they realize that this assailant, this serial killer, is copying famous serial killers, right? So
which is such a cool...
He started with Albert DeSalvo, who was the Boston Strangler, right? And then he moved on to the Hillside Stranglers, which was two guys, right? Bueno and who the hell was the other guy who did Hillside? Bianchi and
You're asking me
Bono?
A name?
I think that's.
I don't get names.
I'm pretty sure that's who.
Those are in and out of my head so quick.
Bianchi and Bono. Bueno. I don't know. I'm pretty sure those were the guys. And then on to David Berkowitz, and then et cetera, right? And finally, when he goes to Jeffrey Dahmer, right? He's in a gay club, and they realize like he's gonna strike. They realize he's gonna go to.
They know the pattern.
He's mimicking Dahmer, so he's going to go to a gay club to pick up a
And they
gay
know
guy.
what Dahmer did, so then they can kind of follow or, try and predict what's going to happen next.
And then finally, towards the end, he's going to do Bundy, which is, I believe, her murder is supposed to be kind of like a Bundy murder. Mm-hmm. So he comes after her. There's all this crazy shit that goes on, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, at the end, we realize... Old Harry Connick Jr., who's in jail at this point, because he was the one who attacked her, has been pulling the strings all along.
Right.
So he's the one who's been contacting outside guys.
He was the one who traumatized her in the beginning, that made her a recluse.
Right. And then he got arrested.
He got arrested, of course.
Right. Went to jail,
but now is like puppeteering all this
other
shit.
serial killer. And this other serial so they didn't and then she actually realizes after I believe Berkowitz or Dahmer, when he was mimicking either Berkowitz or Dahmer, that that this killer was actually going through this list from the lecture she gave the night she was attacked.
Ew.
So she mentioned this serial killer, this serial killer,
right.
this killer, and that was the list he was going through.
Someone took notes.
The same
someone
list.
In that crowd.
So it was Harry Connick Jr.
It was Harry Connick Jr.
Who had relayed this information to somebody else and said you should, and somehow orchestrated this puppeteering.
Damn it, Harry Con.
Yeah. So I actually really enjoyed this movie.
It was a great movie.
I liked
it.
Honestly, I really feel like this movie should be remade. It'd be a fucking great
nowadays
remake.
I think it would be execued a little more cleanly.
Yeah,
but
because
it's such a great concept.
It kind of had that 90s what's her name, Ashley Judd kind of feel to it, right? Ashley Judd, Morgan Freeman kind of serial killer movie
Double
feel.
Jeopardy.
Yeah, it kind of had that kind of feel to it. Even actually a little bit maybe even earlier than that. And then it also had a lot of you were like, well, they didn't have the internet back then. It was kind of cool to see 95 internet, because there was a lot of internet in this movie.
There's a lot more internet than I thought, but they could afford the big computers.
I remember jerking off to the old AOL, but it took a long time. It took a long time for those things to load up, you know?
TMI.
It was forever. TMI. There's no TMI on this podcast. We did Poultrygeist.
That's true. Ugh.
So, but I kind of enjoyed this. It was a fun little movie, and honestly, if you haven't seen it,
take a watch.
I rank it up
even
there
if you don't like horror. I think you'll really enjoy this. It's horror adjacent.
Yeah, it's definitely in the true crime thriller type feel vibe to it, but it was. It wasn't that much different than like Silence of the Lambs or any of those,
Which some people would categorize that as a thriller.
Psychological thriller.
But
yeah, it's fucking
whatever.
Horror. And honestly, like the only difference between this and that movie is that he
keep your evidence for the semantics dome.
He was
E.B. White.
Yes. E.B. White reference. E.B. White semantics reference. Nice job. Yeah, no, seriously, it was the only difference between this and Silence of the Lambs is that he was a cannibal.
Right.
This was actually probably gorier. But it was good.
Watch.
It was a good watch, yeah. So as far as agoraphobia goes, it definitely had that like housebound, fearful, couldn't leave the house.
Preventing trauma related phobic disorder, it represented that well. And, she was bound to the house. So she had these barriers that she had to overcome. In order, to figure out this mystery. So it was a good one.
Yeah, not bad. But I think our topic was good, man. It was really interesting. It really dove into my psyche. It really fucked up my psyche. I know that.
I really loved hearing all of the stories, and I think more in the future we need to gather more stories from outside sources firsthand, and be able to share those with the masses. I know we got to start off with the people closest to us, but are you feeling emotionally raw?
It was really interesting to talk to her today about some of the stuff. I honestly did not know a number of the stories and things that she told about her childhood and things like that. It was really interesting. So I'm really glad that I got a chance to kind of interview her on it, because she was like, wow, really? Like, this is, well, let's dive in, here's the background. And
well, homework for the week, folks. Ask your parents what they're most afraid of, and explore further.
Yeah, and just family history in general, because it's so there's so much stuff that's lost. I mean, that gets lost between generations.
Oh,
you don't realize, and I've always been kind of hyper aware of that because I love history in general. So I've always been really into kind of diving into that stuff.
And we're able to know now more than we ever have about the influence of genetics and nutrition and trauma on, development of all kinds.
Yeah. So, cool stuff. I really enjoyed it. This was very cathartic for me and the family stuff. So
good.
I don't even know what our next phobia is. Do you?
No.
I'm going to look it up real quick because I honestly don't know what the next one is.
Just for a little preview.
Probably check it out. We are on... Aichmophobia. AICHMO phobia, which is the fear of needles or pointed objects.
Oh gosh, I already know what scene I want an honorable mention to be.
We'll save that for next time.
Yes.
Let's tease that because we're gonna do the fear of needles or pointed objects next. And for all you feardos out there, here's what you should do.
Stay afraid. Stay very afraid.